Hello and welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Sales. I'm Ashleigh.
And I'm Kasey Jones.
And today we're going to talk about the fact that being laid off is not a bad thing and some specific reasons why we think that is. But before we dive into this, I want to get back to doing the idea of us listing off someone we're thankful for at the beginning of every episode. And I wanted to start actually with a specific shout out to Mr. James Buckley, who Kasey, when Kasey introduced us, described him to me as a giant teddy bear. And he's proven that to be very, very true the past few weeks. He's just been a huge source of support and always good for a laugh. So I wanted to say thanks to Mr. Buckley. I like calling him Mr. Buckley because that just sounds like what you name a teddy bear.
Sounds very refined. Yeah, he's good people. Yeah, and I'll say I'd like to express my gratitude for Sahil Mansouri, founder and CEO of Bravado. Not only do I love what they're doing, and not only are Ashleigh and I super excited to be building our community on Bravado. Nice soft plug for our community on Bravado. You guys
go sign up. It's
all
awesome.
Go sign up. It's great. But I love the energy that he puts out into the world and how committed he is to really changing things. He's just got an amazing kind of spirit and energy, and I love his entire team. And I'm just super excited about all they have in store and all we have in store in partnership with them.
I find it really fun. We both picked people who are so infectiously positive you almost think they're fake at first, and then you realize no, they're just genuinely that awesome all the time.
Spot on.
So we need more good people like that in the world.
We do.
And that brings us to our topic today about why being laid off is not a bad thing. And this specifically came up because guess what? Ashleigh got laid off. And
damn it.
It's life. And that's kind of thing number one here is if you are in sales, you will get laid off at some point. Statistically,
without a doubt.
Statistically, if you can make it more than, honestly, 6 years, I think you're a unicorn, in my mind. It happens, especially in tech sales. It just happens. And we'll talk about why it's not specifically a bad thing. And this is not about me and my experience right now. This is not my first rodeo with this. I'm leaving on very good terms with my former employer. It's just what happens. But we'll start by first defining what a layoff is. Specifically, what we want to talk about today is the technical term I think would be a not for cause termination. So termination just means you literally aren't employed anymore. We're specifically talking about U.S. labor law here. I don't know anything about Canada, Europe, everything else is way more complicated. But in the U.S., if you're an at-will employee, you can quit anytime you want, and your employer can terminate you anytime they want for any reason that's not discriminatory. So a non-causal, so a not-for-cause termination means just the company's decided they don't want you anymore for whatever reason, and they're allowed to do that. So this does not apply if you quit, if you decide, nope, I'm done, I need to get out of here, or if you are terminated for cause. You do something wrong, you end up on a PIP, miss your numbers, something like that. A really easy way to know whether or not it was for cause or not is whether or not you qualify for unemployment benefits. So if you ask your employer, do I qualify? And they say, yes, it's not for cause. If you ask your employer and they say, no, you won't qualify, then it is for cause. So that's the quick crash course in what the various types of terminations are like. And again, we're specifically focusing on non-for-cause terminations here, or the shorthand being laid off. So Kasey, have you ever been laid off?
Yeah, I have. And you're right. It's not fun, but there's a lot of good sides to it, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about those.
Yeah, and I'll say this, the big reason I wanted to talk about this today was I made a choice to be I chose to be very transparent with social media about the fact that I had been laid off and that I was looking for work. And I've had several people reach out. Hopefully most of you listen. I think several of you do listen. And if so, please know I am talking about you, and it meant a lot that you reached out. And it struck me that several of them used the same word, and they called me speaking out about it brave. And that really struck a nerve with me, because why is talking about something that had nothing to do with me brave? And it's because there's this stigma that if you were laid off, even if it wasn't for cause, that it was somehow your fault, or that there's this best practice that you should say you're still employed on LinkedIn by your former employer until you find a new job, because that makes you look more desirable to employers. I don't know that that's true anymore. And I'd rather personally, this is all personal opinion here, but I think it's time to start being honest about what a not-for-cause termination means and start dealing with that stigma.
Well, and I think, look, we all know that building out your kind of personal network is super, super valuable.
Yeah.
And social media plays a pretty critical role in that process these days. And so the idea that you'd put in all this work to kind of build your network, build your brand, and then not leverage that when you kind of needed it.
Yeah.
And there's something I think really powerful about being able to kind of put the word out there to the many people that you're connected to, and kind of seeing what happens. And obviously you saw, just such an outpouring of support and, discussions about opportunities and collaboration and all kinds of other things. I'm like, why wouldn't you do that when you get laid off?
I'll say this. You all will know at this point, very few things legitimately make me speechless. Watching the ticker go up on comments and messages and connections, and even just, virtual high fives, you've got this, that I got after posting that, and I posted it a week or two after it happened, that is my highest engaged, most liked, most viewed post ever on LinkedIn, which I still find very ironic. But what came out of it was nothing but positivity.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing but positivity. And it made me so proud of this community and of other fellow sales professionals. And like I said, the thing that keeps sticking with me is how many people reach out and said, I wish I'd done that. So if you're going to be in this situation, if you're in this situation now, or if you're in this situation in the future, I hope you think of this and you know that there really is an option. And one of the best things about being transparent is you control the negative. If you don't treat being laid off like it was a bad thing,
yeah,
there's a good chance future employers won't either. And if they do, then you get to make a decision about whether or not that's something you care about.
Yeah.
Versus feeling like you've got to hide something icky that happened to you.
No, and it's something that truly happens to everybody.
Yeah. It's like losing your first tooth. It's going to happen.
Well, and especially if you're in the even remotely startup-y B2B tech world, companies are constantly changing their, shifting how they do things and how they want to do things and how things are structured. And that means, you'll be the proverbial collateral damage from time to time, and that's okay.
Yeah. And there's this stigma against jumpers and people who jump ship too quickly. And that's a whole different thing. Specifically, what we're talking about here is if you get laid off. So let's talk about a few reasons why being laid off is not a bad thing. And I think the most important thing to remember about being laid off is it's not your fault. Being laid off not for cause literally means it is not a reflection of you or your skills as a salesperson.
Yeah.
Like literally it has nothing to do with you. Layoffs more often than not are a decision at the company level or 2 or 3 levels above you, most likely, where it was for whatever reason the business needed to cut heads.
Yeah. And sometimes it's like, they're shifting strategy around. I was at a company when they created an inside sales team. They only had account executives before that. Created an inside sales team, moved a couple of SDRs up, and then realized that it wasn't really a product that could be sold that way. And their lower cost option was not really working. And so they had to kind of cancel that entire department and they didn't really want to move those people. They'd moved up, back down, and there was nowhere for them to go. And, that's the kind of thing where it's like, that's not on them as salespeople at all. It's
No.
the company made a kind of an experiment, and you unfortunately were part of the experiment. And I think that kind of thing happens all the time, particularly in startup life.
Absolutely. And especially in sales,
Yeah.
where it's not, and I say this with all the love and respect in the world for them, but engineering typically is centered around high performing universities. So they can secure top talent out of those universities, So the tech hubs, you'll notice, tend to correlate pretty strongly with high performing engineering programs. Salespeople are much more ubiquitous. That's why you see bigger sales hubs in fantastic places like Raleigh, North Carolina, and Portland and Utah and Austin, Texas, and Phoenix and Chicago and Minneapolis and all these other kind of Boston, all these sort of other things. It's not just, San Francisco and New York. And so a lot of companies will look at those smaller things. But even, I know companies that are San Francisco-based startups that think they can get SDRs cheaper in San Jose, open up a San Jose office, and then realize a year later that's not a good idea either. It's not that much cheaper. And so all of a sudden, even those SDRs who are 20 miles away are in the wrong location. So this happens all the time. And it also, I'll tell you this, I have been laid off several times as a precursor to an acquisition.
Yeah.
Which I did not know about at the time. I look back and go, 3 months after I was laid off, they were acquired by that company. Got it. Okay. They were streamlining headcount to to maximize their profit.
I have one of those as well. And that's particularly sort of common for salespeople.
Yeah.
Because it's the easiest place to trim headcount in order to kind of streamline your numbers and get a bit leaner and meaner before an acquisition.
The only other people that go before salespeople are recruiters.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of recruiters think of themselves as salespeople, and we've got some recruiters listeners, so hello.
Yeah.
But the big thing here is this is the company's choice based off a number of factors, which you probably don't know and you really don't care about, because the only thing that matters is you don't have a job anymore, but it's not your fault.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think so. And this kind of moves us into another point about this, the fact that it wasn't your fault, the fact that it wasn't for cause. It also means you're probably leaving on pretty good terms as long as you keep it that way with your employer. And so that means that they might wind up being a good reference for you. So that's just a bit of a word of warning. Be an adult, be kind, be gracious.
Yeah. Pro tip, especially when this gets sprung on you, never sign anything in the room. Ask for 48 hours, cool off, and then make decisions.
Yes.
And I'll say this, another kind of side effect of this is just a pro tip to leading on good terms. Some of my best sales friends have come from layoffs because we were all laid off at the same time, or, we left very near each other. And so we could lean on each other during the job search process. And people who, especially because I was a manager, I made it a point not to be particularly socially close to the people I managed. The moment we're both laid off, if I think you're cool, I might say we should go get coffee, because you can do that now. And some of those people become really good friends.
That's great.
So you can also, there's a few people that have been involved in layoffs, and we actually formed like Facebook groups called, XYZ company refugees, and jokes like that, just to, hey, I heard this company's hiring a bunch of salespeople. We should all go apply there. Whoever gets in first should get referral bonuses. And you can come out of it, whether it's a one-person layoff or a big person layoff, with actually a really cool tribe of people that are going through the same thing. Or even if it's just somebody who's going through the process from another company at the same time, there's always support out there, people who are going through the same thing.
Yeah. And I think that is a really good point. So another thing too, is it usually means, because the company is usually going through something, it means that role isn't really that stable. it is evolving in some way, and it probably wasn't the best fit for you anyway. It is very rare that I talk to someone who gets laid off and they're like, I was absolutely thrilled with my job and I saw so much opportunity. It's usually where like things have been shifting and there's, I don't know, there's some incentive on your side to also want to be moving on to the next thing.
Totally. Whether you see it or not. And it's really easy to have, everyone's familiar with the phrase, have you drunk the Kool-Aid? I don't want to go into the etymology of that because it's really dark, but it's really hard when you're in a company and you've drunk the Kool-Aid to see the flaws.
Yeah.
The system. The moment you're removed from it, probably should have seen that.
Yeah.
But not the end of the world. But I think the other thing to mention here is I have lost count of the number of people who have come to me and said, I don't understand why they laid me off. I was the top performing sales rep. And it's like, yeah, I know it looks really weird, but there's always a reason. You just probably will never know it. And I know companies that have specifically laid off the top performing salesperson because it was too expensive.
Yep.
And they could take all the stuff that you were working, give it to a cheaper, less experienced sales rep and have them handle it for less.
Yeah.
That sucks, but it does happen. So if you're in that boat, that could be a thing. But the fact is things are changing in the role, even if it was perfect, which I doubt, it's not going to be the way it was. Anytime, and I've quote unquote survived layoffs at companies before too, as often as I've been included in them. And every time these things happen, it's an earthquake. It's a structural shift. Sometimes it's for the better, sometimes it's for the worse, but no matter what, it's going to change. The day-to-day reality of your job is going to change. And that just means that that's one less thing you have to deal with. And if you were successful there before, that means that there's no guarantee you would have continued to be successful had they kept you.
Yeah, no, it usually means there are some major fundamental shifts going on within the company, and there are inevitably going to be pains associated with that. Sometimes they're worth it, but plenty of times they're not.
Yeah.
And having the opportunity to kind of go seize on an opportunity that is maybe a little more exciting and a little less, I don't know, stressful, that might be a better option all around.
Totally. And I think that instability, it really is, I think kind of point number 3 is anytime there is a layoff, a reduction in workforce, it's an indicator of company instability. Now it could be them intentionally breaking something to make it stronger, or it could be breaking things to try and survive. But either way, you use the phrase, the shit's hitting the fan, and you don't know which way it's going to come down. So it's kind of nice not to have to deal with that. And I mean, a little side note, what is it? 90-something% of people, when they take a new job, take a pay increase.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Not necessarily a thing there. So you can go from a company that was, whether you realized it or not, slightly unstable, whether it's figuring out product market fit or preparing for an acquisition or whatever else, these things that are happening at a macro company market economic level. These big things, it's not certain, it's not stable, and that's not good for sales.
No, it certainly isn't.
That's not the kind of instability we thrive on.
No.
We thrive on, changes in the market that we can use to our advantage, not
yes.
Oh,
and look, on top of that, and this sort of brings us to our last point, is that this also makes the process of finding that next gig a little bit easier.
Yes.
Now you've got some time. 2, you probably have a little bit of severance to give you a little bit of a buffer so that you can kind of make your full-time job finding that next gig. I think even when you're sort of ready to move on, when things are kind of okay where you are, you get a little bit complacent, and it becomes, you don't have that sort of fire under your ass in the same way. And so you aren't going to be actively looking for the next gig in the same way that you will be once you're laid off, and might be the best option for you anyway.
Absolutely. And I mean, take advantage of unemployment, take advantage of being smart with your severance and everything else. The other thing that's nice is you get to say, I was laid off. It was not my fault.
Yeah.
That's a very powerful statement. And there are protections for you. So there's nothing to be ashamed of here. And I think I keep saying the same thing over and over again, but it's just, I feel like it's something that needs to be kind of screamed at people a little bit, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think we've always been taught that it always comes down to us and to our performance, and that just isn't always the case.
No, that's really true. I mean, as much as we say we love sales because our pay is in our control and all this stuff, it is as much as it can be compared to probably any other role in the company. But we're still subject to the same instability that every other job is subject to.
Yeah. And you might be really, really good at selling a crappy product, but if it is still a crappy product, like there's, there are other things that are come into play. Right. And
I gotta say that's another rite of passage, selling a crappy product.
Oh,
at some point in your career, you will sell something that is crappy.
Yeah. Or is great, but is like,
buggy.
50% more expensive than a product that is like 90% as good. I think we've all had that too. Like yeah.
Yeah. There's these things that you go through, or I think the other thing that happens a lot is you go in being told, oh, we're cash flow positive, we're revenue positive, we're this, we're that. You come in and you realize maybe if you cook the books a certain way, but my gosh, you guys have a huge amount of debt, or
it's also, I think we've all, and this is probably another episode, but we've all had those sales jobs where you get told, oh, it's 80% inbound leads, 90% of the reps are making quota. Like they quote all these numbers at you, and then you get in there and you're like,
our close rate is 80%, and this amount of time to close. And we've all, the same thing we've all
been
heard.
there.
Just the same way we all put on our resume that we've attained X% of quota consistently, or that we're all top. Have you ever interviewed anyone who said they were a mid-level performer on their sales team?
No.
There's a certain amount of this that is how business is done.
Yeah.
And the net result of that is we're all human, and companies are run by humans, and sometimes shit just doesn't work out.
Yeah.
And when it results in a layoff, that is pretty much the best exit you can hope for, because it's not your fault. It can't hurt you. You end up with the most protections possible. You end up the most economically viable possible. The only downside is you don't know it's coming more often than not. But it's not the end of the world. And I think that's the other big thing here is it just means it's time for the next opportunity. And the next one is going to be so much better than where you were, whether you knew it in the moment or not. Hindsight is always 20/20. And I don't know anyone who has gone through a layoff that hasn't found something better quickly. And I don't mean like next week or next month, but they end up where they're supposed to be eventually. You just do. And where you're supposed to be is where you're supposed to be right now. And that may change 6 months later. Yeah. I mean, just to give you an idea, I had 2 layoffs in 2016. I got laid off twice within 6 months because both the companies I picked got acquired. Like, that's just, if you want to judge me for something, don't judge me on my sales skills. Judge me on my ability to read a company and whether or not they're gearing up for an acquisition.
Yeah.
Like, you can judge me on that. I got that wrong twice. Not going to get that wrong again. But there's no reason to be embarrassed or defensive about a layoff. And in interviews, I never had any problems. When companies asked, oh, what happened? You had 3 jobs in 12 months. Yeah, 2 of my companies got acquired and I got laid off as the first wave of those acquisitions. Yeah, oh, okay. I can Google and find those acquisitions. No big deal.
Well, And especially because you were the most recent hire, probably.
Well, I was the most recent hiring manager, I think, at least. But management's always another interesting layer on top of this.
It is. Yeah, no, I think that's the real message, is that there's a lot of opportunity that can come from getting laid off, but you do need to have kind of a glasses half full kind of outlook on it so that you can seize all of that opportunity. Otherwise, it can get a little too tempting to mope.
Yep. And, I think that's something else that's really worth pointing out is it, I have a whole blog I wrote on this. Ironically enough, the blog was written before I got laid off, about when you leave a company, you go through the 5 stages of grief, because in some ways we really view our jobs as a part of our identity. So when that part of your identity dies, you grieve it. And to that point, like when there's a layoff, it's usually sudden. You're going to get pissed. You're going to get angry. You're going to get depressed. And that's all normal. But the sooner you can blast Ariana Grande, "Thank You Next," or whatever you decide the song is, the better. And people build on positivity
without a doubt.
And it doesn't mean you have to be inauthentic. Like you could say, yeah, that sucked. That really hurt.
Yeah.
But I'm trusting that there's something better coming.
Yeah.
So it's okay. It's okay to say I'm scared. It's okay to say, yeah, that hurt. But the moment you start making it personal, the moment you start making it anger or even hatred, God, I can't believe they did this to me. I don't wish them anything. That also feeds on itself. And the number one reason I've seen salespeople struggle to get new jobs after a layoff is they're so negative in interviews.
Yep.
It's, oh, well, I was set up for failure and this and that, when they could have just said, it was a layoff. I did everything right. They just decided to reduce the workforce. Then there's nothing to critique. But the moment you go in there and start blaming and pointing fingers, then it's a debate. And then you look like someone who's going to complain and point fingers if everything goes wrong.
Yeah, it all comes down to your attitude and how you approach things. And there's obviously lots of challenges that come with getting laid off, but there's a lot of opportunity also. Yeah. You just have to be in that right mindset.
Yeah. Give yourself the space to feel what you need to feel, and just try to fake it at least a little bit. You'll find it's not that hard to get excited about new opportunities and people who are excited to snatch you up. And I've seen this after layoffs, after any sort of different things. The moment you start talking about other opportunities, it ignites a part of your brain that is really fun and exciting. You start imagining these incredible things and what you can do with the extra money you're going to have, or the extra time, or the better product, or the more supportive team, or 1.5 million other things. And it turns out better in the end, and it will turn out better in the end.
Yeah. So if any of you out there are going through something like this or have recently, come hit us up on social and tell us kind of what worked for you, or what you're kind of struggling with now. I'd be very curious to kind of keep the conversation going.
Absolutely. So with that, please remember, you can always find us in our Bravado community on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. You can also find Kasey and I individually. We'd love to hear how you're staying positive, challenges you're facing. Lord knows I've got time right now, so don't hesitate to reach out to me as well if you want some less edited feedback and thoughts on next steps. And that's the big thing. Don't hesitate. We always talk about networking and reaching out, but seriously, if you're going through this, you don't have to go through it alone.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Not worth it. And with that, thank you for listening.
Thank you.